how's it going? I hope you're all well. Um, so this is week number 10, our final week, with any luck, that we're going to be doing this online learning. We hope to be back in our lab on the 12th of April after the Easter holidays. Okay, so we only have two more classes. This is our video one, and then we'll have our live one on Thursday. Now, I've added in this folder down here. You'll see it. It's called Ecology. I think I actually called it Ecology and Energy Flow. So they're the last two things that I need to do before the summer exam for the theory. Now, obviously, the only thing we've left after this is all the experiment part, the fun bits of it, which we get to do for the last few weeks. So we should have a nice last few weeks in school, going through all the practical stuff, which should be quite light and easy to manage. And then we'll give a week at the end in order to revise all the theory that we've done between January and the end of the year. Okay, so our plan is, and I'll remind you this at the end of this class, this is going to be a bit long, because you give me a few minutes, because it's a real notey type topic. So but I'll run through it with you. What we're going to do is the end of this week, you're going to give me your equipment list. Over the holidays, I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure we have all that equipment and try and put it together for you in the lab, in our old lab. I think we'll have, and we're going to. So I'm going to have that ready. So the first week back will be you doing your experiment for your CBA. After that, then, we'll go and we'll start the experiment parts of the course. So we will start the experimenty bits of the course, so the bits that we've done in theory but we haven't done experiment wise. And then what we do is we'd put all the exam questions together that you'll need to know for your May exam, and that'll lead us into the summer, and that pretty much puts us where I would be at the end of second year anyway, which is great. I just want to put just remind you that down here on the left you'll see, I think it's called summer exam, I called it. This is what I agreed with the science teachers, the other two science teachers, and what we're going to be doing. So you think of chemical reactions. There's a couple of them. This is the atomic and covalent bonding, the sharing of electrons and so on. And I think this one is the part of ecology. So all your physical reactions, chemical reactions, your changing of electrons, all that. This is the Big Bang before Christmas, but we didn't actually get to examine it. Interaction between Earth and space, so your tides and your what the moon affects the seasons, all that kind of thing that we did before. Your spacesuit and your space travel and the hazards and the benefits. The types of chemical reactions, so this goes into your metals and your non-metals and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff we did before, we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. In here is your energy transfer. So this is one to do with photosynthesis and to do with respiration, and it's also to do with ecology as well. So I'm going to do a bit of energy transfer and ecology as well, if we can, over the next week or so. Okay, so we're going to go back and have a look at ecology. This will take a bit of time, but we will get through it. It's just kind of, it's one of these topics you just kind of have to read it, learn it, answer the questions, a lot of definitions and stuff. Okay, I'm just going to go onto the iPad as well so I can write. So ecology, wouldn't have the greatest enthusiasm for ecology, if the truth be told. It's in biology, it's in the biology section, and what it does is it looks at the relationship of organisms, generally animals and plants, how they relate to each other, to one another, and how they respond to their physical environment, how they adapt, change, live, eat, reproduce, excrete in their environment. So it's the relationship of organisms to their environment. So basically, it's related to geography as well. So it's all about how the earth works, and how different animals live in different places. Why you're not going to walk across the car park and get bitten by a rattlesnake. How come you don't have any penguins living in the pond outside the school? That kind of stuff. And to provide evidence of this word here, interdependence between the natural world and people. So why we depend on the natural world, and the natural world depends on us. It gives us a better understanding of ecological systems. You hear of things like the Great Barrier Reef is breaking down, habitats are being cut down, that's causing more carbon dioxide. So it's looking at all that relationship between of how all that works, and how Humans, industrial development, so basically building stuff and cutting down trees, affects local habitats and local ecosystems and stuff like that. Okay, like I said, there's a good bit of this. Right, the second definition, first one's ecology, there it is up the top, and the second one is this one here, habitat. So a habitat is a natural environment where something lives. So basically where an organism lives. So it's where an organism lives. Monkeys, well, trees, slugs in the ground, humans in houses, zebras in Africa, this kind of stuff. So it's the environment where a particular animal needs. So why do certain animals live in certain places? Because they have they have unique needs. They get their food and their water and their shelter in different ways. Okay, so they live somewhere that meets their needs. They can also breed there, so it's important that they can reproduce in a particular place. Generally, it has something to do with, now it could be if you're a crocodile, you need to be near water. But generally, it's something to do with the climate, something to do with the food that's available, something to do with competition. If you're a poor little small animal that can't hide very well, that can't move very fast, you're not going to live. You're not going to be living near animals that can eat you or that want to eat you. Okay, so this is generally what all animals and all plants are trying to do. They're trying to survive. So by choosing the correct habitat that suits you, it will decide whether you survive or not. Survival of the fittest. Okay, another definition. A community. So a community, if you think of it, you live in a community, is all the animals and plants that live in a particular habitat, that live in a particular habitat, and they'll all share off the resources in their habitat. So in ecology, that's a group of interacting species living in the same place, so living in the same spot. That community stays together because of the effects that one species has on another. Organisms in every habitat have a particular role. Fancy name for role is a niche that work together to keep the community healthy. So definition wise, it's all the animals and plants sharing the resource in a particular area. Okay, I know there's a lot of these, but we'll be doing them over and over again. You'll kind of see the difference between them. I use that word niche there. So a niche is the basic is the job of a particular animal or the role of an animal in a company in a community. How it interacts with other organisms. If you decide that I want to make a product and make a load of money, is there a niche in the market? Niche is like a space, your own individual space. Is there room for? There's no one making mobile phones that are also hamburgers. Okay, there is a niche in the market that I can have a business and get a foothold and make $1 million out of, or whatever. That's a niche. Your particular role that allows you your space within a habitat. So it's the particular role. If you have a look at these birds here, this bird here has these big, huge, long legs. So they're going to feed on fish. Very difficult for a duck. The old duck, small legs. The only way that can get the fish is if he goes all the way under the water. This one's going to feed in the shallows. Legs are not long enough to be down here, but you can feed in the shallows. This guy's legs are even smaller. But because they haven't got long legs or they don't swim like ducks, what they have developed is a really sharp beak. And one that hasn't got a sharp beak and still has little small legs is going to have to adapt. Well, it's not going to be able to eat fish because my beak probably isn't big enough. I'm not a big enough bird to eat fish. My legs aren't long enough. I can't really swim like a duck. So I'm going to have to adapt and I'm going to eat insects instead. So you can see all those different birds there have all adapted for their own habitat. And they're not even competing against each other because they're all eating different things. Okay. Have to bring this in all the time. Sustainability, habitat preservation, Greta Thunberg, blah, blah. And it is usually important for like the continuation of the species and the sustainability on the planet. So if we look at losing habitat and damaging habitats, what that causes is extinction. So we end up losing species. So by us looking at a particular habitat, if we're us doing an examination, we can find out what are the different life forms that live in it. How have these animals and plants adapted to their habitat? What have those animals and plants done to make them suitable to live where they live? What have humans done that's after making a change to those habitats? Can we look at, well, what are those factors that cause harmful changes in a habitat? And then hopefully the idea is by studying ecology is that we should be able to prevent harmful conditions that can destroy a habitat and it stops species. And I know it can be hard to think, well, we don't want to be making loads of money by burning fossil fuels because that does something with global warming and the carbon cycle and can cause damage to the Great Barrier Reef, and that doesn't really, affect my life too much. But we're going to go through and see, well, maybe it will in the long run. So here's just a couple of things I wanted to show you, things you might do in ecology, things that we'll be doing when we go back. You can have a look at the air temperature. What's the temperature of the air? Well, the air temperature can increase if there's stuff in the air like smog and smoke and carbon dioxide and so on. What about the temperature of the soil? The acidity or basicity of the soil, or the light intensity? And these are just the equipment that you would use for those to take those. This definition here is, if you see the word abiotic, biotic means live. So any live factors, the animals, the plants, the fungus, the bacteria, they're all biotic factors. Abiotic factors are non-living things in a habitat. So like things like your air temperature, your soil, your intensity of your light, so all the stuff that are non-living. And when you start to look at habitat, when you start to take a look at a habitat, I'm going to make this a bit smaller. When you start to take a look at a habitat, you can start to kind of gather data on what is the living and non-living things in the habitat that you're studying. So we'll be doing it in the grounds of the school now. So it'll be people get carried away and say, and they ask to list living things in their habitat, and they write tiger. Not many tigers hanging around the Mill Road in Blanche. So these are the kind of ones that we're going to be looking for. So you'll get questions like this in the exam. They'll say, right, I see at the top of the pink box there, are the leaves single, not divided into leaflets? So is it one big piece of leaf? If it is, go to question 2. If it's not, go to question 4. And it brings you all the way down. And what you can do is, from this, is you can use a grid like this to figure out, okay, I can figure out what the ash one is, I can figure out where the horse chestnut one is, I can figure out what the holly tree is, and I can figure out what the beech one is. So we don't actually know. Personally, I'm terrible at trying to identify leaves, but we can figure out what plant these leaves come from by answering these 4 questions. So I'm going to let you finish that one off. And it's the same with one of these flow tables here, down here. If we say, right, we get a spade and we dig a little hole and you find this kind of creepy crawly looking yolk, and you're thinking, okay, I need to see the creepy crawly looking yolks. And you say, has it got legs? Has the thing I've just found, has it got legs? No, it hasn't. Okay, has it got a shell? No. Well, then it's going to be an earthworm. If I'd have said yes, it would have brought me to a snail. So again, this is an animal one here. This one here is related to an animal. So you can do it for animals and you can do it for plants. And I'll be giving you books of various leaves and plants so you can identify what you're looking at. Okay, more definitions. Consumers. So you think, well, we're all consumers. We all go to the supermarket and buy stuff. But in ecology, a consumer is something, usually animals, usually plants don't go eating things, that feed on other things that are alive. Humans in particular, we eat basically everything. We eat fungus, we eat bits of cow, we eat bits of celery, plants, animals, the whole lot. The other type of organism, well, there's 3 of them in total, but we'll stick with 2 for the moment, are these things, producers. basically they can make their own food. We just spent a lot of time doing that last week. And the only thing they can make their own food are green plants. Okay, so you have two types. You have producers and you have consumers. Now here's another load of definitions. So don't worry about these ones too much, because I bet you know them already. Animals that can hunt, catch, and eat prey, other animals, predators. The animal that gets eaten is the prey. Hugely asked question in junior cert. Herbivore, a carnivore, and an omnivore. And your most important word in your answer to this question is the word only. Some consumers eat plants only. A herbivore only eats plants. A carnivore, and a lot of humans say with I love my steak, I'm a real carnivore. You're not, because they would mean you would only eat meat. Herbivores only eat plants. Carnivores only eat meat. Humans are omnivores. We eat both plants and animals. Even if you eat a small bit of potato or a crisp, that's a plant. That's potato, it's a plant. So we should be able to identify at least 5 consumers. Okay, a couple of ways that you can catch animals in order to put them in a key, and we're going to do all these here. One, I'm not going to go into these in detail because I'll rather show you, but I just put it in there so you'd see. A pooter, it's like a cup, has 2 straws on it. And basically what you do is you put this bit over the left bit over the, so a pooter's there, and what you do is you put the red straw over the insect, see the insect there, and you suck in through here, you suck in through the right, and the insect goes up the straw and into the thing, and there's a little gauze, you see this gauze thing on the bottom of the other straw. You can imagine what that's for. That's so the insect doesn't go up the straw, into the cup, and then back up and into your mouth, and you end up with a woodlouse or a fly in your lung, which would be unfortunate. The second one is these things here, and these are kind of really physical yolks. A beating tray. So a beating tray is basically, it can be anything really. It can be a sheet, and what you do is you put the beating tray underneath the tree. You get a stick and you bash the stick with the tree and see what falls out. Bits of spiders and flies and grasshoppers, things like that might fall out of the tree. You put it under a bush as well. Other one is a pitfall trap, and we'll set one of these. And basically you I haven't got any pitfall traps, but you dig a little hole, stick a beaker in the hole, and cover it over, and little animals will, like spiders and things like that, will fall into your beaker, and will be stuck there, so you can have a look at them the next day. And we have magnifying glass and things like that we can check those out. The third one is so you have producers, you have consumers, and you have decomposers. So decomposers are things that break down dead stuff. So they're actual living things, and what they do is they break down dead plants and animals into materials that go back into soil. You see the TYs are making a compost bin. You throw your tea bags in, your eggshells in, your grass cuttings in, and things like, what will happen is worms, beetles, woodlice, bacteria and fungi will get in, and they will digest all that and turn it into compost. That's what a compost bin is. Okay, I know I'm flying through this, but we'll go back over it again. We've done this a few times. This word here, adaptation, is the way an animal or a plant is suited to survive in its environment. So what makes an animal or a plant suitable to survive in a particular environment? So adaptation involves changing the structure and behavior in order to be able to survive in a particular habitat. So it can be a changing of the actual structure of the animal or the plant in order to survive. If you, just really quickly, if you have a polar bear and a polar bear is sitting at an ice hole, and he sits beside the ice hole and he's hoping that the seal is going to jump up, and when the seal pokes his head up through the hole in the ice, the polar bear gives the seal a clout across the head and knocks the seal and can eat the seal. But seals adapted their behaviour. So what they would do is that before they come up, poke their head up out of the ice, they would look up, and of course the polar bear is white in a snowy habitat. So the only part of the polar bear that the seal could see under the water was the polar bear's nose. And then obviously it wouldn't poke its head up because its nose is going to get a clout. And the polar bear adapted its behaviour. So what a polar bear will do now, the polar bear will make a hole in the ice, sit down, and put its paw over his nose. So when the seal looks up, can't see the black part of the nose and will poke the head up, whack. Cool little adjustments. Rattlesnakes also have adapted to play dead in order to avoid hunting. So they you can walk over, you can kick them with your foot, and certain breeds of rattlesnake they just won't move until the danger is away. So they play dead. Loads of adaptations like that. Webbed feet on duck for swimming, wings on birds for flying, the stacks of different adaptations. And we look at a few of them again. Different sorts. I'm not going into this again. Different sorts of habitat. The one I'm going to highlight is we're going to look at a hedgerow, and we're going to look at a grassland. So we're going to look at a field and a hedge, basically. That's where we're going to look. We're going to be looking for things like butterflies. We're going to be looking for things like worms. And we're not going to go start catching birds and all that, frowned upon. Competition then is the interaction between members of the same species. So you think if a certain animal fancies eating worms, and that's fine, but what happens if there's two different animals also that both want worms? So basically it's interaction between members of the same species or different species for resources that are in short or limited supply. Okay, so plants kind of crowd each other out. So they're obviously, plants are not going to be fighting to eat tigers. Plants are going to be fighting for things like light, water, and space. So they'll put their roots out and push other plants and smother other plants. They'll grow higher in order to get more light than the plant next to them. They'll take in all the water, and the weaker plant will die off. So they will be fighting, even though you don't hear them fighting or see them fighting, but they are fighting for the things that the plants need to photosynthesize. Animals, bit more obvious. They'll fight for food, place to live, mates, reproduction, and territory. They'll mark their territory, they'll fight for their territory. Poor old red squirrel in Ireland. So it's a little story, and it's a good example for an exam. The red squirrel was found in Ireland for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. And the grey squirrel was introduced. So the grey squirrel was introduced. So the red squirrel had its choice of the food, the accommodation, it all pick of the trees, and the red squirrel. The grey squirrel was actually introduced to Ireland and released into the wild in order to bring the numbers of red squirrels down. They don't fight. They don't tend to fight. But the grey squirrel is a bigger squirrel. It's a stronger squirrel. And generally, if there's nuts going or there's accommodation going, the grey squirrel generally wins out. And if you go down to the Phoenix Park now, and you go for a wander around, you'll see loads of squirrels. You won't see any red ones. So the red squirrels would have died of the cold from no accommodation. They would have died of starvation because the grey squirrel was muscling in the territory, and it happened really quick. So that's kind of things that it's a good example of competition and what happens to a species if you introduce something that's not supposed to be in a particular habitat. This is an interesting one. Interdependence. Malili there, I know this is long, and it's very, very, very wordy, is the way one thing relies on another. And this is important for human survival, and something people kind of forget that we're worried about making sure everyone has enough beef for some reason. But if we look at things, all the non-living things, such as air, light, warmth, water, minerals, and food, we also rely on things like such things as soil and rock, okay, for things like shelter and building and things like that. So what we're looking at, one organism depending on another. So if we look at things like food chains, So food chains and food webs. I'm going to show you one of them. And that shows energy is passed from one organism through the other through food. So if we have a look at a food chain here, quite a simple one. You have a nettle. Caterpillar eats the nettle. And the blackbird eats the caterpillar. So what's after happening here is, remember you had photosynthesis here. And there's loads of food. All the energy from the sun is now contained in that leaf. And all that lovely energy then is taken by the caterpillar. All that energy then inside the caterpillar, inside its cells, in its mitochondria. And the blackbird wants energy. The blackbird goes, right, I will eat the caterpillar. So the energy passes from left to right. If we look at it, because it's never as easy as that, because there's going to be other stuff trying to eat the blackbird, there's going to be other stuff probably trying to eat the caterpillar, there's probably other animals that eat the nettle. So instead of this one, the top one is a chain, this is more accurate. This is called a food web. So you can imagine there, all our producers are down here. So our producers are all down here. Producers are all down here. All up here, all of these are consumers. So our producers are all our plants. Okay? And what's happening here, right, so if we have a look at some of the examples, if I was to say to you now, because I'm not giving you mad words like predator, prey, producer, consumer, interdependence, things like that, food chain. If I was to ask for a food chain, well, I could say, well, the dead leaves. Earthworms eat the dead leaves. Starlings eat the earthworms, and sparrowhawk eats the starlings. Another food chain. Well, mice eat the seeds, and owl eats the mice. Or I could say mice eats the seeds. No, there's no more that way. I could say snail eats the primrose, hedgehog eats the snail, and owl eats hedgehog. So there's a couple of ones. If I was looking for a predator there, well, here's a predator here, sparrowhawk. Here's a predator here, an owl. What's a prey animal? Well, a prey animal is going to be your hedgehog. Hedgehog could probably be both. Hedgehog is prey if you're an owl, or it's a predator if you're a snail. Now, it's not a top predator. You might have heard of the lion being the apex predator. The owl, in this food web, an owl would be a top predator, an apex predator. But that's your example of a food web, and I'll be giving you examples of those to work out, and we'll put labels on them, consumers, producers, and so on. Okay, nearly there. Interdependence is a very fine balancing act. Just before I move on, we might say, if you were an owl, you're thinking, the only thing I'm concerned about, I'm just, flying around being an owl, I'm interested in hedgehogs and I'm interested in mice. I don't really give too much thought to seeds. I don't really give too much thought to primroses. But I suppose what happens if this line goes away? The leaves, the seeds, and the primroses go away. Owl's like, well, that doesn't really matter to me because I have my mice and I have my hedgehog. I don't eat primroses and seeds. But interdependence means the owl eats the mice, but the mice dies if it hasn't got seeds. The owl also eats the hedgehog, but the hedgehog will die if the primrose die out. And why will it die? Because, well, if the primroses aren't there, the snails have nothing to eat. If the snails have nothing to eat, they die off, which means the hedgehog has nothing to eat. And if the hedgehog has nothing to eat, they die off. Owl doesn't make it. This is why it's a fine balancing act. And as humans, we have to kind of think of the broader picture. If we're digging up trees and forests and we're filling the air full of carbon dioxide and we're not planting any trees, well, or any grass, well, there's going to be nowhere for cows to eat. If cows don't eat, we don't eat. If all those kind of things we like now, the berries and all that, if they're not pollinated because we've killed off all the bees, well, we don't get all the things that we like to eat. So we have to think of the bigger picture, not just the thing we're actually putting in our mouth. So if the producers die off, so if a producer dies off, the rest all die off as well because there's lack of food. So the feeding relationships shows interdependence. Animals depend on plants for food, so directly or indirectly. So animals depend on plants for food directly or indirectly. Whether they're eating it directly or they're eating the animal that's at the plant, they depend on it for food. But plants also depend on animals for things like pollination. So you think bees are buzzy things to sting you. But pollination and the reproduction in plants, if that doesn't happen, if we kill off the bees, the pollinating insects, well, they're responsible for making fruit plants. So we end up running out of fruit. So it's kind of a balancing act. It's worth our while protecting the bees. I know you kind of think, oh, protecting the bees, that's a real kind of tree huggery type thing to say, Greta Thunberg in the background. But it's important because we need, if you want to be able to go to the shop and buy a punnet of blueberries for your porridge, it's important that we have animals that can pollinate, aka bees. Plants also rely on animals to disperse their seeds. So you want the seeds dispersed to a different area so the seed can grow. To germinate's a fancy name for growing. Germinate's just the early stages of growing. So population of any animal or plant is dependent on another population of organisms. So if we have a load of rabbits and they're annoying us on the golf course, if we introduce foxes, they're predators, and they will because they'll catch and kill the rabbits. But then you're thinking, well, what effect could foxes have? Could you say if you had a load of rats down in the middle road, could you say, let's buy 100 rattlesnakes and throw them out there? But the rattlesnakes kill the rats? Yeah, but then you have a rattlesnake problem. So you've got kind of balance all these interdependence, competition. Could the rattlesnake survive on the middle road? Bit cold, and something to do with their habitat. They're not adapted to their habitat. So yeah, loads of things to kind of put together. And Sinead, sorry that was so long and kind of really, really wordy. I was going to put in videos and animations and stuff like that, but it would just give you more to do, which I don't need to do at this point because they're last week. So we will go through all the kind of the experimental bits and the summarized part of that when we get back. I also have a bit more to do about energy flow, which I will do, just pyramids, pyramid of numbers and ecosystem data and stuff like that. But I will do that when we get back, or maybe Thursday. You've no homework. We will do some ecology questions when we've finished ecology and energy flow and done the experiments. So most of the ecology questions are kind of experiments with a bit of definition thrown in, so there'll be no point me trying to give you an exam question on that at the moment. The most important thing, and I know I'm harping on about this an awful lot, but I want you to get with if you're working by yourself, send me on your draft CBA1. Most importantly, I need your equipment lists to make sure I have all the gear in the lab so you can do this day one when we return. But your draft CBA should be done up to including your step-by-step method. Right, I'll chat to you on Thursday for our live class. And any questions on the CBA, any questions on ecology, sure, email me in the meantime. If not, have a great week, mind yourselves, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.